Hey there guys, it's Metro and welcome to the video where I finally give my full detailed opinion on 5-man Mythic plus Azerite gear, something I've been wanting to do for so long now, but the system unfortunately flopped out of the gate. We had pretty much no chance to access any of this gear, but in 8.1 we finally do. So this video is going to act as a sort of guide, quote unquote, on how I feel about specific pieces, which pieces I would recommend you get first, you know, especially as soon as the patch opens. Maybe you get your first chance at getting one of these pieces. This is the one I would recommend. And also, if you're going random or, you know, you just get one randomly, how should you feel about it? And again, this is all my opinion, and many people will probably disagree with it, but it's how I feel. This is what I'm going to be doing, and maybe you'll be able to learn from my opinion and maybe be able to form your own based on my education and knowledge here. So let's get right into it. In case you're not aware what's actually happened here, there is now a vendor for Azerite gear from Mythic Plus dungeons. From all 5-man dungeons are now on this vendor. This is down here by where, you know, the seal vendor is, whatever the reforge thing as well. Transmog, all that here in you know, the main city down south of the Great Seal. So hopefully you know where this is. But anyway, here's the guy. I imagine a very similar place for the Alliance. I think it's right next to the inn for them as well. So it should be easy to find. But we have these random pieces. Okay, these weird icons here. These are a random piece. This was talked about in a blue post I made a video on a while back. But basically what they're trying to do here is give you an opportunity to get a random piece. Effectively, I guess this number here, 1250, is going to equate to about every 3 weeks if you're doing Mythic Plus. Now, we don't know exactly how many you get per the cache. We don't know if you get more from doing, say, a 10. Compared to like a 2. We don't know more if you get more from, say, doing an 11 compared to a 10. We don't really know anything about this yet. We will know more in the future. Also, they said that you're going to be able to scrap gear, scrap Azerite gear in general, and get some of these essences from it. I did scrap 2 new pieces of Azerite gear on the beta, or on the PTR, and I did not get any scrap or whatever from it. None of the new resource, so that can either be interpreted as it's not finished yet, which is likely, or it's not a guaranteed chance to get something from every scrap, just like it's not a guaranteed chance to get Expulsum from every scrap. That's pretty likely too, knowing Blizzard. So regardless, you know, think about that. There's going to be other ways to get it outside of actual Mythic Plus, but this is going to be the main way you'll rely on getting it every week in your chest. You'll get some sum of whatever this is, Titan Residuum, or whatever, however you say that, and eventually you'll be able to buy some of these items. Okay, now like they said, I don't know for sure, 3 weeks for a random one, and if that's the case, then it looks like about maybe 9 weeks for one of these, depending on what happens with the scrapping situation. So regardless, I'm going to tell you how I feel about this whole situation. You know, I'll give you a breakdown of all of the options here, and I'm going to tell you which ones I would recommend going for if you are going to go specific. Okay, so first things first, I would not be opposed to just going straight random, okay? And I'm gonna go through every single item, but realistically, item level is going to trump everything in this Azerite system, all right? You gotta be aware of this. The amount of strength and stamina that you're gonna get is gonna be too much to pass up. No matter what the traits are, they're gonna be good enough to make up for any significant item level increase, okay? So if you're not wearing 385 in each slot, you probably should just go random, okay? You're going to have a couple weeks to obviously get through this too, right? So maybe you'll continue to get some from Raid, or maybe you PvP, or I'm not sure, maybe they'll add another source of 385 gear. But regardless, if it takes you only 3 weeks after the patch to get this and you still don't have 385 gear, probably not a bad idea to just go completely random, all right? And again, go completely random on any chance, you know, that has an upgrade. So if you have 385 Helm, obviously work on shoulders first. If you have 370 shoulders, you know, like me, I have 385 Helm, 2 370 shoulders. So realistically, if I was to start with this system immediately, I would probably just go 2 random pieces to make sure I had 385s in both slots, and then we worry about specific pieces from there. But realistically, are we going to have enough time for this? I don't know. If it actually is going to take like 8 to 9 weeks to get these specific pieces, then realistically, how long are we going to have this system for before it gets upgraded to the next system, which will be happening apparently in January, quote unquote. So this is a difficult thing, a delicate thing to talk about. And again, in January, apparently, when the new season starts, the gear is going to get an extra ring. So this was something that was talked about coming in 8.1, but is not actually coming until that new season starts, apparently. Again, nothing set in stone here. It's a PTR, but I imagine that's what they're going to do. So with that in mind, you're really only going to have about 4 weeks before that happens. So the min-maxer in me is saying probably just don't spend any of these until that happens. But we don't know if they're going to reset them. We don't know what's going to happen with this vendor. So it's, it's difficult to have this conversation here because there's so many variables. But if we're in a world where everything is perfect, there's never going to be any changes to the system, there's never going to be any upgrades, let's go through every single item. I'll give my detailed opinion on how I feel about it. But first, we're going to start with the #1 choice, I would say, for helms. And then we'll have a #2 choice just in case, and then we'll go through every other item. Okay, so my #1 choice for helm is going to be this. This is actually the one I have on live, and I think it is the best bang for your buck. If you're going to take this long to get one, I would recommend getting this one. And you're going to see a trend here. It's because of impassive visage and Azerite veins. Okay, these traits alone are better, in my opinion, again, in my opinion, than anything else on the Azerite tree, however you want to call it. They are extremely, extremely valuable. They're going to equate to a ton of my healing over any Mythic Plus dungeon. And obviously, if you've been watching me do that, I've been running with 3 impassive visages and 2 Azerite veins. And they're doing something like 20-some% of my healing for every dungeon. This is as a Blood Death Knight with Bone Storm, all this. So you also have overwhelming power on this piece, which is actually a really good item, a really good slot here. A lot of people think, oh, well, it says you take, a stack is removed when you take damage, but it only removes 1 stack, even if you're constantly taking damage. There's some kind of cooldown on it. Like if you're getting hit by 5 mobs every quarter of a second, it's not going to take 5 stacks off within that, maybe every 1 second, like it says. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I have used this, and it does give you a good amount of haste over the course of a dungeon. So, just in case, you could use that instead of Azerite veins. But, the real problem here is Marrow Blood. I think it's a pretty weak... Thanks for the sub. I think it's a pretty weak option, but realistically, it's still all right. It's still going to make you heal more, and that's kind of what we're after on these pieces. We want to supplement our defensive kit, and there's a lot of good offensive options, but I do feel like the defense that some of them bring is just invaluable, and you really should probably focus on that. So this would be the #1 piece I would recommend. If you had to have a #2, it would be the Helm of Abyssal Malevolence. Here it is. This is this one. Now, this has the new trait. We talked about this in a previous video, but it's replacing Embrace of the Darkfallen. Embrace of the Darkfallen has been removed from the game, sadly. I was really excited to see how much Leech we were going to get, but frankly, it was kind of just a bait trait. I had no idea how invaluable Leech was going to be based on our health pool. So, yeah, not a great option. This one, though, is probably a much more conservative, a better pick overall. You're going to get a lot of haste throughout the course of the dungeon with this, and the extra runic power is nothing to sneeze at either. It might be awkward, it might come at times when you're already capped and you'll waste it, but the haste alone, I think, has some legitimate value. And of course, if you can stack a couple of these, you might be getting a lot of haste every time Crimson Scourge procs, which does proc pretty frequently. This is going to last for 5 seconds, and don't forget, the CD of Death and Decay is 15 seconds. So typically, you see a Crimson Scourge proc around every 8 to 10 seconds. So, if you get, I don't know how lucky you could reasonably get, but you're going to have this up for about, probably over 30% of the time you're in combat. That seems really good to me. I really like that, but this is new, so I haven't tested it myself, okay? But we also have overwhelming power again on this item. Very good, especially if you're looking for haste, which I still think is our best stat. I really like overwhelming power, and I think it's a great option. You also have Shimmering Haven, which I'm not a big fan of, but I know some people do like. And then, of course, you have Impassive Visage, again, on the earliest tier. And you also have a new trait called Cold Hearted, okay? This is brand new as well with 8.1. I haven't tested it, but it's going to give you 3,828 healing every second while you have Icebound Fortitude up, and it's going to reduce the cooldown of Icebound Fortitude by 15 seconds. Now, it's a 3-minute CD, of course, so this isn't going to completely change the way you use Icebound, but it is going to dramatically improve your survivability when Icebound is up. Now, the way I use Icebound, all right, so again, this may differ for you. The way I use Icebound is, oh my god, I have nothing else going for me right now. Let's use Icebound. That's the way I found it to be useful the most, and it's definitely going to mean I'm not going to overheal with this. It's going to last for 8 seconds, so that is going to be something like 30,000 healing over the course of Icebound, and that's just with one trait, and that's just at 385, which obviously we're going to be able to get even better Azerite gear coming in the future. So this is going to be a very, very good trait if you ask me. I think it's going to have a lot of impact in 5-mans, a lot of impact in soloing situations, but is it better than in Passive Visage? I'm going to have to try it, and we will let you know when we do, but for now I don't know. Okay, so that's Helms. Let's go to Shoulders now. My pick number 1 for Shoulders, the number 1 that you will want to get is the Sithraxi Binder's Pauldrons. Has Eternal Rune Weapon, which I think is arguably the best trait in the game for Blood Death Knights. I really, really, really like this trait, and I know not everybody agrees, but I think it gives you exactly what you want. You want to have big burst windows, especially for DPS, but also for survival. The more strength you can pile on in this window, the more effective you're going to be as a tank, and obviously the fact that it increases your Dancing Rune Weapon even a little bit. I know it encourages bad rune usage throughout Dancing Rune Weapon. It doesn't have to be maximized 100%. Just getting a couple extra seconds on Dancing Rune Weapon is going to make these, 30-second packs with like many mobs. It's going to make it a lot smoother, and it's going to make the CD a lot better overall. And that's exactly what I want in 5-mans. Now, again, overwhelming power. Here we go. This is a great trait. I think it's going to be good no matter where you see it. But we also have life speed, which, I think is a very good trait as well. It's not a lot of haste and a lot of avoidance, but, I do think it's something to consider. And then you also have Gut Ripper, which is, I think it's one of the best single target Azerite traits in the game. So if you're for some reason only worried about offense, you have that option there as well. But I would not tend to recommend going pure offense on your Azerite gear. And then again, we have Cold Hearted, which I think is going to be amazing. I would love to have these 2 pieces out of the gate. Having 2 stacks of Cold Hearted, I can only imagine how good Icebound might be. Making it that extra HPS CD is going to be so nice. But Resounding Protection is actually a really good trait. It heals for a lot, very consistently. The problem with it compared to in Passive Visage is, in Passive Visage is affected by your versatility, so I believe is Resounding Protection, but it can crit as well. Resounding Protection cannot crit. So it does provide a good amount of regular defense, but I do think Resounding Protection is better in raids, because you're gonna not be tanking for 30 seconds at a time, and then as soon as you taunt over, it'll be a much more effective, that absorb will be more effective at that point. You wouldn't have been wasting it on small damage like you might do in a 5-man, where it's kind of ticking your health down. It's not really doing a lot. You don't really need a big absorb like that. So I'd probably take Cold Hearted on this piece. Okay, that's my number 1 pick. My number 2 is Pauldrons of the Horned Horror. There's a couple there. Pauldrons, where's that? Over here, Pauldrons of the Horned Horror, okay? And again, Marrow Blood, like I said, it's not a great trait, but it is going to increase your healing throughout the course of a dungeon, and that's really nice. But again, in Passive Visage, you're going to see this come up time and time again. I feel like this is a very, very, very good trait. And not just for Blood Decays. If you're playing any tank and you can get your hands on in Passive Visage, it is going to help your kit 100%. But we also have Bulwark of the Masses, which I haven't tried myself very much, but it does seem like it's going to be decent. The problem is it cannot occur more than once every 20 seconds. So to me, it does kind of feel mathematically inferior to Impassive Visage. So regardless, on this piece, I would take Impassive Visage. The problem here is the second ring is not great. We have Shimmering Haven again, which can be decent, but I would probably take Elemental World. This is an interesting piece because it can give you both Verse or Mastery. I don't know if it can give you both at any point in time. We've had interactions like that before. Maybe you guys know. If you do know, let me know. I've never actually used this trait, but if it can, then that's even better. Who knows? Maybe you get haste and versatility up at some point. That's pretty valuable, especially on a piece like this. So I would probably take that, and that seems like a good option there for a second best piece for Shoulders. Now we have Chest, which is the famous breastplate of arterial protection. This is the only piece in the game that has Bloodright, which I think is the best trait in the game for Blood Death Knights in Mythic plus 5-mans especially. This is going to refresh constantly in 5-mans, especially on weeks where there's a lot of, or keys as well, on weeks and keys where there's a lot of fodder, things are dying. It's going to refresh the effect while you're in combat. Effectively, if it procs at the start and something dies 15 seconds in, you're going to have this up for pretty much the entire pack. And this will also refresh with something like Explosive. So if you're fighting explosive orbs, every time they die, it is going to refresh it. And this is extremely valuable for me. If I could have one trait, it's going to be this. So if I was to pick one piece of gear out of the gate, as soon as I can buy anything, I'm going to buy this one. My #1 overall pick is going to be Breastplate of Arterial Protection, and it's not just because of Blood Right. It's also because it has Azerite veins on it, which, you know, is very, very, very good for self-healing. Definitely better for a tank that doesn't have consistent ability to top themselves off like, you know, Blood DK does. Maybe better for Monk, better for Paladin, better for Warrior, something like that. But still a very, very good trait on this second ring. And you also have something like Heed My Call, which does do a lot of single target damage. But really cool trait here, March of the Damned. Not a great trait in terms of obviously tanking, but it's really cool to have at least one of these because it reduces the CD of Death's Advance, which is really nice. Having more access to mobility is definitely something that should help every Blood Death Knight, but it also gives you a speed boost while you use that. And if you can get multiple of these traits, presumably, I think I have tested this, it does stack, so it can make you run really fast, and that's really cool as a Blood Death Knight. It also has Self-Reliance, which I have yet to find a discernible use for, but I feel like there might be a time that it could be useful if you're trying to like solo or some very niche situation, like when I was soloing Razan, constantly running away from him. There's no enemy, so I'm going to be healing a ton while I'm far away from him. But regardless, that would be my #1 pick for chest and #1 overall. If I had to pick a #2, it would be Breastplate of the Vengeful. This again has Eternal Rune Weapon, one of my favorite traits in the game. It has Crystalline Carapace, which I think is probably the best pure defensive second tier trait, however you want to call it. It's extremely valuable. And obviously when damage dealt greater than 10% of your maximum health, that's always, okay? That's all the time. So this is going to be very, yeah, it's going to be good. A decent offense as well, I feel like. I've never really properly tested it. If I can get 3 pieces of it, I would like to see just how much DPS it actually attributes, but kind of just free armor, which is definitely not a bad thing for Blood DK now that we've kind of been nerfed for now, at least with our armor, our passive physical mitigation. But it, again, has Cold Hearted. I'm going to try to get 3 pieces with Cold Hearted and test this out. I really want to see it. Also has Gut Ripper, also has, you know, some other options on here. This is a cool new trait, but it's obviously for Frost. And more importantly, it has Vampiric Speed. Vampiric Speed is extremely good for explosive weeks. I think it's a mandatory trait. If you have it on your gear, you should take it for explosive weeks. Every time a mob dies, you get a Vampiric Speed heal and some speed itself, which is really nice. This is going to be up all the time in explosive weeks, and it's just going to keep refreshing every time a new explosive orb dies. So effectively, if you're fighting a boss, especially if a boss maybe has 2 targets, you're going to constantly be killing explosive orbs, and you're going to be constantly getting healed. And now, I would think this is even better for damage dealers, honestly, because you don't really need the healing as a Blood DK. Like, you know, the healing is nice, but there's so many other ways that you could heal yourself. But if you have 0 healing at all, this is going to be amazing. So anyway, let's go through the other pieces real quick. I'm just going to give you my quick opinion on them all. Okay, Gem Hide is a very good physical mitigation trait, and again, it's going to be up all the time. You're always going to be getting hit for more than 10% of your health. Also has Impassive Visage, so it's a great piece. Bone Spike Graveyard, we've talked a lot about this. It had a lot of potential, but I just don't think mathematically it's going to live up to my expectations of the trait. It needs to proc the second you put D&D down, or at least way more frequently. That's the big problem. I put D&D down, and it doesn't seem to proc very frequently. But it has Razan's Fury, which I do think is the best the best trait for offense if you're worried about offense. And it's got Winds of War, which in 5-mans is just going to, anytime you're actually fighting something, it's going to be up for the duration of the pack, okay? Taking damage grants you 39 dodge for 3 seconds, stacking it to 5 times. And obviously, if you have multiple things attacking you, it's just going to keep stacking. So you're just going to have a ton of free dodge. This is a very solid piece, but it doesn't have the impact that I feel the other pieces have. So it's not a bad, maybe 3rd option kind of thing. Raptor King, we already talked about. Sea Brawlers, Great Helm. Let's take a look at this. Bones of the Damned. Hopefully you guys are aware. It's a pretty decent, you know, it's not a bad defensive trait, but you really want to try to find traits that are going to do more than just one thing, especially on that front row. But, you know, especially now with the armor nerfs, maybe this is a good option. Maybe it's an improved option. The middle tier, I don't like at all. I don't think it has any good value to it. And Vampiric Speed plus Resounding Protection are good options. Again, Resounding Protection probably better for raids. Vampiric Speed only really good for weeks with explosive, and then it's really good. So good piece to have in your bags for sure. Overseer's Riot Helm. I think this is probably one of the weaker pieces. It has a Blade of Shielding, which is kind of just a better Crystalline Carapace at the right times, but worse, obviously, when you're not below 40% health. I do think this is a good trait, though, regardless, especially for tanking raids. You're going to have a lot of times where this is very useful for you in raids. You're going to be getting hit very hard, and this could help you a lot. So if you're in that situation, good. But otherwise, really not a lot of good options. I think Deep Cuts is the worst trait in the game for 5-mans in general. Really, for everything in general, we talked about ways that you could possibly make it better with what's the name of this talent? Rapid Decomposition and Heartbreaker. I don't know. I haven't tried it, and I don't think it's worth it. And again, the inner ring is so valuable in terms of healing. March of the Damned is nice, but it's like you really got to have something on the piece. So I think it's probably one of the worst pieces in the game. Putrid Path. Have we checked this one out? Have not, apparently. This is Eternal Rune Weapon again, so that's a really good piece. Not a great second ring, though, of course. Filthy Transmutation actually isn't a bad healing piece either. So yeah, if you're really looking for the self-healing, Filthy Transmutation would probably help you a lot. And again, Resounding Protection, we've already talked about that. So, and then what did we say? This was the second best choice, right? Helm of, yeah, Abyssal Malevolence. So you guys already know my opinions on that one. So that's it for helms. Let's go to shoulders now. So we have Pauldrons of the Great Unifier. Yet again, Bones of the Damned. A decent option, but again, only offense. It's completely devoid of any offensive benefits. So very, not a great pick for 5-mans. A Blade of Shielding's okay. I wouldn't sneeze at having that. And again, Vampiric Speed is pretty good for explosive weeks, but not good otherwise. Bulwark of the Masses can be good for 5-mans, but I do think, again, just mathematically inferior to some of the other options that are on this tier. So not a great piece. I would not use this if I didn't have to. Let's take a look. We've seen Sathraxi Binders. That's the one we recommended as number 1. Sky Scorcher Pauldrons is another pretty good trait slew. I do think this trait is going to be very valuable, so not a bad piece at all. A Blade of Shielding, yet again, really good physical defense that you're going to get constantly. And Gemhide, again, more physical defense kind of for free. This is actually a great piece. And, you know, it also has this, Unstable Catalyst. A lot of people are fond of this trait because it gives you primary stat, and I can see why. Primary stat is really good. So this is a really good all-around piece. It's got Gut Ripper as well if you're looking for offense. So it's a good mix and match piece if you're trying to see maybe optimize some offense here and there. But actually, it's a really good physical defensive piece, honestly. A Gemhide plus a Blade of Shielding on one item. If you're ever looking for just pure physical defense, you're not worried about self-healing at all, this is probably going to be the one that you want to take. So that's a good option to have in your bags. Sky Scorcher Pauldrons. We also have Lockjaw's Shoulder Plates. Again, Winds of War is never going to be bad if you're looking for, again, pure mitigation. But the other rings, you know, are mediocre. I'd say Elemental Whirl can have some value, but I'd probably take Winds of War. Bone Spike Graveyard, we already talked about that. These are just not great traits. And again, the inner ring is just absolutely terrible. The AMS thing is actually really niche and really cool when you can use it, but I don't think you're ever really going to have any use for it in 5-man, so I wouldn't ever take this piece. I would not use this piece again unless I absolutely had to. Kraken Shell Spalders is actually a really cool piece. Has Meticulous Scheming. If you guys haven't seen this trait, it can be very good, but I guess it kind of makes you think a little bit more about what you're using. Realistically, you don't have to think. I mean, you're going to use 3 different spells eventually. I don't know how often you'd have to worry about using them, but realistically, it's a good haste proc. Definitely better than Deep Cuts, right? And again, Crystalline Carapace, so not a terrible piece, but you're stuck with Bulwark of the Masses if you're actually looking for defense, and I just don't think it's the best option, especially since a lot of Mythic Plus packs are not, like, you know, 4 or more enemies is common, but it's not every pack, especially now in the world where we have teaming. There's a lot of single, like 1 or 2 mob packs that are very dangerous. You can't afford to pull more than those, so you know, March of the Damned's cool, but it's not good enough to make up for that. What else? Did we miss any? I don't think so. Final one is, oh yeah, this is the final piece that we talked about already. So there you go. So there you have it for the shoulders. Now we'll go to chest. Again, we already talked about arterial protection. So let's talk about Desert Guardian Breastplate. Now this has the trait that was arguably the most overpowered trait in the game in the very beginning. It was doing an insane amount of DPS and probably still does. But I'm just not worried about traits that only do one thing. I really like traits and trinkets and gear in general that checks multiple boxes. And obviously Thunderous Blast is not going to check multiple boxes. But if you're looking for a pure offense loadout, this might be the one for you. This piece is actually really valuable because I do think it's the only, I think it is the only Mythic Plus piece in the game that has this trait on it. Just like Bloodright we were talking about before, very unique. So Again, extremely good physical defensive pieces here. Gemhide and Crystalline Carapace. Very, very, very good for just pure physical mitigation. Also have the option of Vampiric Speed. Also a Blood Siphon, which, you know, gives you a leech. Not very good, but regardless, it's still there. The problem is this trait kind of just betrays the whole purpose of it. If it had Bones of the Damned or really any other trait, it would be a better option, but you know, Bone Spike Graveyard is just terrible. So it's like, all right, we're going to take this crazy offensive trait and then 2 defensive traits. Just seems like you don't know what you want on your piece. So I wouldn't recommend that too much unless, you know, it's your highest item level piece and you got to wear it. We also have this trait here, Secrets of the Deep. This is an interesting one. So it kind of gives this piece a little bit more credibility. Not a big fan of like these non-Death Knight specific ones, but I know that mathematically they're quite viable. Obviously, you know, primary stat can be very useful, so you might want to keep that in mind. And then again, we have life speed, we have elemental whirl, and we have resounding protection, which are all like mid-tier. I'd say like they're average. They're pretty good traits. They're not great, nothing I would go for, but it's not a bad piece if you have it. Then of course, Harpooner's Plate Curious is a decent piece. We have Marrow Blood again, mediocre, but you know, not bad. Dagger in the Back, pure offense, wouldn't take it. Life speed, you know, we talked about that, decent item. And then again, these two are pretty much useless for tanking. Increasing your movement speed by 20% of your high and secondary. It's just not realistic. You're never going to have enough of a secondary to make this good for actual competitive play. And I'd imagine it would just be worse than the other March of the Damned one anyway. So Harpooner's Plate Curious, probably not going to use. And then final one is this one here, Ashvane Warden's Curious. This is Bloody Rune Blade again and Meticulous Scheming. So you both have very good options. I don't know which one's mathematically superior. Probably is that one. I don't know though. That's interesting. 521 for 5 seconds or 743 for 20 seconds. Realistically, this is going to proc more than once every 20 seconds. So it might be more valuable. I don't know. It's interesting. I'd be interested to see some math behind that, but you know I'm not a math guy. So again, overwhelming power and Bulwark of the Masses. Not terrible, not great, but this is a pretty good piece. If you got this one, I would not be disappointed. And then we talked about this one already, which was, I said, our second best for chess. So there you go. Finally able to make a detailed video on all Azerite gear for 5-mans. I'm extremely excited. Once again, TLDR, I would probably just go random. There's really only maybe, you know, if there's what, 6 or 7 pieces for say chest, there's really only 1 or 2 that I would say would be a miss, would be a complete whiff. The other ones, while not being home runs, are very good, and you really just want to have the highest item level in each slot. You want to be getting the most stam and strength as possible. You know, as a damage dealer, it's really only the strength that you want, even though the stam can be very valuable. But for a tank, both primary stats are extremely important, especially as a Blood DK. A lot of percent-based healing, a lot of healing in general. The more health you have, the better off you're going to be with that. So really gotta recommend that. So if you're sitting there thinking, all right, well, I have a bunch of 370 gear, I'm pretty much never going to upgrade it unless I get it from Mythic Plus, what should I do? Just go random. All right, good luck on the roll. You might get what you want. After you do, then maybe start thinking about targeting, say, Helm of the Raptor King. Very, very good piece, especially for that soloing mentality where you're in there, you're trying to let the healer do his thing, not worry about getting as much healing, and then you're going to get a lot from these traits. So this is really good, and it's only going to get better. But again, so much of this is predicated on the notion that we're not going to have a whole new revamped like vendor, okay? And what I'm going to do is when that does happen, which it will happen, we're going to go through every piece again and make this same video again, because it's going to change. These pieces are going to have different traits on it. For example, you know, let's find a piece here that's bad. Like maybe, you know, this piece is really bad, right? This is a piece that I would probably never, you know, whatever. Just an example, I would probably never wear it, right? Well, guess what? Now it's got another option on that outer ring, makes it a lot more wearable. And that's what they're trying to do with the system. But we got to see, I don't know how it's going to work. Are they going to reset the currency? Are they going to make a new currency? They might just make a second currency, which if that's the case, then that means you're only going to have about a month or so, a month and a half, maybe at most, with this version of the currency. And that means you're probably only going to get 2 items at best. So you got to go random. You know, you can't, obviously, you're literally not going to be able to get one of these. Again, depending on how the scrapping works, which I don't know. On the PTR, I was not able to get any scrap from any of this stuff. So we'll have to see. But if you guys know any more about this, let me know. Otherwise, that is my detailed video on Azerite gear from 5-mans. Finally happy to be able to make it. Really was disappointed that I wasn't able to get any Azerite gear from 5-mans. After the tons of that I got from the beta. It was really fun, had a lot of it, and it was really easy to mix and match. So we're finally ready to go. 8.1, really excited. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, good luck, happy hunting, and good luck in your pieces. Share them down below. Let me know those people who get these best in slot pieces on their first item. That's always fun to see.